What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. Use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. This is the time and the place where you get to ask and get answers to your Amazon advertising questions. One of my favorite days of the week. Always super excited. Always get a lot of questions. Always get a lot of to be honest, some really tough questions, but those I think are in fact some of my favorites. So if this is your first time joining on, first time welcome. Really appreciate you joining. And then if you are returning, always appreciate people who are watching. And also I get people who are like, hey, I watched the replay as well. So if you're watching the replay, hey, thanks for joining in. If you are first time, again, running across us, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ads agency called Junglr, hence this show being about Amazon advertising and all of the new things coming up. So we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now in terms of managing ads, which means been around the block, seen a lot of things, seeing a lot of changes to the way the ads are serving. Our strategies have been shaped over time due to changes, new reports coming out, new ways to look at ads, and also Amazon just giving us more options in terms of targeting. The platform has definitely gotten more complex since I've been doing this, which, by the way, if you're listening in, format of this is drop your Amazon ad question into the chat. I'll pull it up and get you answers to your questions, which we always typically get like a rush of questions towards the end of the top of the hour. So I'm going to be here for an hour answering your questions. So if you do have a question, I would highly recommend getting it in sooner rather than later, because depending on time and when you ask your question, will determine if you actually are able to get it answered. I try, like sometimes I stay over because I don't really want to not give anyone answers, but that being said, it just is dependent on time. So the sooner you drop it in chat, the sooner you get it answered, and then you can make sure that you won't miss out. But in terms of changes, gosh, so many rapid changes to the ads platform, and some really interesting insights and things coming out when it comes to AMC. So we've been getting a lot into AMC. I know everyone wants to talk about it. AMC being Amazon Marketing Cloud. It basically is a way for you to understand like audience targeting. We've been digging more into like path to purchase these days, and like which path to purchase I think is entirely fascinating. And the world of Amazon advertising as we know it, or sponsored advertising as we know it, I would say. Not necessarily DSP. So DSP is kind of always operated on audiences and paths to purchase and more of that long-term play when it comes to advertising. But when it comes to sponsored ads, it's very much a immediate conversion play, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the ability to now see things like paths to purchase, or did you know that there is a way with Amazon Marketing Cloud to be able to see like new to brand orders with sponsored ads? I think is entirely fascinating and pretty amazing. And so we've been really just kind of digging into that and helping us understand there also is some ways that you can actually pull out the time frame in which people most likely purchase. So one of the things that we're looking at is like, so with sponsored ads, typically the time frame from click to purchase is pretty quick and pretty immediate in a lot of our accounts. But then sponsored brand ads, sometimes the consideration window tends to be a little bit longer, which has been quite interesting. So a lot of really cool things to dig into, a lot of like the world of again, Amazon ads, even on platform ads, I think is going to get really, really exciting really quickly. Which, by the way, if anyone can see and hear me, drop a comment into the chat. I want to make sure my microphone is working, and sometimes we end up with issues. I think can you quickly share hacks like catch all? Okay, cool. So I am seeing some things in the chat. It seems like some people can see and hear, which is fantastic. But yeah, if you can see and hear me, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to pull up the first question. So the first question is, can you share some quick strategy hacks like the catch-all? That is a fantastic thing. So I would definitely say catch-alls are a huge one, which, by the way, if you are not running a catch-all campaign in your ads account, you absolutely should be doing this. This is basically, I don't want to say it's guaranteed to print money and guaranteed to work, but if there was a campaign type that was more guaranteed to work, I would say it's a catch-all. So all right, so I'll kind of go through the catch-all, and then I'll give you some other campaigns that we've seen generally typically work pretty well. Catch-all auto campaigns, you take an auto campaign, have all the targeting types active. You don't have to pause any of those. You put a low bid. Low bid is relative to the account, but typically speaking, you're looking at like 25 cents, sometimes 15 cents. And then you put your entire product catalog into that campaign, and you let it run. And I would put a lower initial budget on that. That's typically what we do. Now, sometimes you start out with like, a $50 a day budget, but you can start out with a $15 to $20 a day budget. Most likely it will start to outpace that and spend. Optimizations to be done here. You still want to add negatives. So you still want to look at those and see if there's search terms that have a ton of clicks and no orders, or you also do want to look at the products being advertised. And like sometimes you can treat those as like if you get a ton of clicks and no orders on a specific product line, you want to make sure that you are pausing those in this campaign. But other than that, you kind of just let it run. Now, the one thing to be very careful of here is you don't want to increase the bids much or at all. Now, if you are in like a higher cost per click category, say supplements, where the average cost per click is very likely something like $4, then here you might say like, okay, maybe I'll increase bids to like 75 cents or something, which is still low, but low. When I ever say low bid, that what I'm counting as a low bid is going to be relative to what the average cost per click is in your category. And then in terms of like other strategies like this one, we have seen that low bid single keyword broad match campaigns for some of our top keywords, so the ones that we're like converting really on. So in Amazon advertising, if I could give you like a blanket strategy that applies to most everything, I would say Amazon ads and strategy is a game of determining what is working well, how do I do more of that, and then what is not working as well, how do I do less of that. And so to do more, you basically look at, again, what is converting, so what keywords are converting, what ad types are converting, what match types are converting, and say, how do I do more of this? So in the example of, say that there's a keyword that's converting really well, maybe an exact match or somewhere else, you can say, hey, let's find long tail variations of this, which broad match is a really good way to do that. Again, you want to keep the bids lower here, and you also want to make sure that you put a cap on those bid increases, because I'm not a huge fan of going super aggressive with broad match. There is a tendency to have a bunch of wasted spend if you're being too aggressive with broad match. So while I'm a favor of the match type, or you can do like single keyword phrase match if you want to as well. I was trying to think other things that we've seen work well. Actually, AMC audiences attached to a auto campaign do work really, really well as well. So Amazon has the ability to, like, they've released pre-built audiences. So if you don't have an instance, because you don't say have like access to an agency or someone who can create an AMC instance for you, you can use the pre-built audiences. And in that case, what we have seen is that audiences who have added the product to cart but then have not purchased make really good attachments. So what we do is we are launching new auto campaigns specifically with these AMC audiences. Again, for shoppers who have added the products to cart but then haven't purchased. And then you want to put a moderate placement percentage increase on those one. I believe we're starting them somewhere between 20, 25 or 40% increases on those. And those for most of our accounts have been working really well. That's kind of where we started with AMC audiences and ads, and it works so well. I'm maybe a huge believer. And then we've been digging more and more into that data, which, by the way, if anyone else has an Amazon ad question, feel free to drop it into the chat. I don't know if you have any follow-up questions on any of those strategies. I'm trying to think if there's anything. I would say the best like custom ad strategy is going to be one that takes a look at the brand goals. So what is the brand trying to achieve? Is there a specific growth? Is it a specific profit dollar? Identifying the products that are most likely to have the biggest impact on that goal. Oftentimes these are the top products, but sometimes you can find, in terms of other strategies, I really like a catch-all campaign to help identify new potential products to push. That's a fantastic one. So oftentimes in your traditional catch-all campaigns, which again is simply an auto campaign where you add your entire catalog, most often the products that are served the most in those campaigns are typically your best sellers. And that's very common, and to be honest, that's fine. But what you can do is you can create another catch-all auto campaign. I would name it something else. So it's the same strategy of low bid auto campaigns, multiple products. But what you do there is you don't add your top products to that, and you simply add sort of that mid catalog. So it's the products that are like, yeah, the conversion rate's all right. I really would like to see if I can push ads on these products, but I don't really want to put like a full launch budget behind it because that gets expensive really quickly. And so this allows you, what you could do is you could just launch them in a catch-all campaign, and then you then go back, analyze the products that are being advertised underneath that campaign and say, hey, is there any of these other products that are doing really well? And then you can then move them or start launching specific campaigns for those. Okay. I don't know if there's a specific question. The question was, you have a brand which is everything like perfect listing products. but it's very difficult to get the conversions. What are your steps in this case? That's a really good question. So in that case, well, I would push back on the first part because you said you have a brand that has everything that's perfect listing, perfect offers, and products are available, but then it's difficult to get conversions. Oh, I appreciate the follow-up questions. The product is in skincare. Yeah. So in skincare, reviews are really important. So I don't know what stage the product is in, but if you don't really have many or any reviews on it, just note that your conversion rates are going to be lower on the products. The reason being is because with skincare, there is a sort of distrust that a lot of consumers have towards skincare in general, not just on Amazon. Like if you tell me that this cream is going to fade my dark spots, like I don't believe you. Like I think maybe you could be, but you could also be lying to me and overhyping it because you want a sale. But if like 200 other people in the or in your reviews are telling me, oh my gosh, this is amazing and it totally faded my skin, like my sunspots, and I'm like, oh, okay, I totally believe you now, right? So it's that validation that the product works and works as intended. And honestly, just getting those reviews takes time. Just a couple reviews that are good reviews that are more like, hey, I like this thing, more like, hey, this is what this thing did, or, you know, this is the texture of it, because you can't, you know, feel and touch and try products because they're online. So I would say reviews are probably a big hindrance to conversion rates, which unfortunately those just take time. The other thing I would say is that I would push back on that the listings and the offer are perfect, because if they were, then you would be getting more sales. So what you want to do is identify, like, where are you advertising this product? Where are you pushing it out into the market? Look at the other competitors who are on those pages and really take a second pair of eyes to what they're doing and what you may be lacking. The other thing that I will say is that never only put one of your top things about your product in the bullet points. Your image stack, like if I could give you one thing to optimize, I would say it's probably the image stack. The image stack is like, yes, A+ content, helpful. Good bullet points, helpful. Good title, helpful. But in terms of conversion rate optimization, the image stack is where it's at. So sometimes it's putting a certain one first. Making sure, I can't tell you how many listings that I've looked at. It's like, it's so easy when you're looking at it on a desktop or you're the one designing it to say like, oh wow, this has like everything that, like, it says everything. The text is really important, but the size of the text, like, you also have to think about mobile optimizations as well. And so you want to make sure that all the images, like the text, is super readable. You don't want too much text, but you do want enough text. Make sure you have infographics. Just make sure you're just completely maximizing that. And then you're saying, well, yes, price is a huge, if you have the option to decrease the price to help accelerate sales, I would say price decreases will 100% help with that. Of course, it does eat into margins, so there is that. But if you can drop the price, I would definitely recommend that. Unfortunately, with the Amazon marketplace, like, pricing is a huge lever to pull. I say unfortunately because there's a lot of sellers who are like getting squeezed out in terms of that. And then I would recommend, let me get this out of the way. On our website, if you go to junglr.com, if you go to resources and product launch strategy, I don't know if you've seen this, but we do have a whole product launch strategy that we give away. This is 100% like the strategy we use when we launch new products. And that most likely will be helpful because there's a lot of things that go over like relevancy, choosing keywords, how to choose keywords, like the whole 9 yards. That most likely will be really helpful. And again, if you're already launched, you're probably like, it's probably kind of okay. But I might give it a read over because most likely there's going to be some tips or things or optimizations in there. And I go over troubleshooting there as well. Is like, if conversion rates are low, what do you do? And honestly, the answer is look at the listing and see, again, you're looking at it versus the market. I know there's some really good tools. I know Junglr does it. I think Data Dive definitely does it as well, that allow you to input your competitors and look at their image stack versus your image stack in a nice view. And oftentimes that can be really insightful because when you're just clicking around on the pages, again, it's sometimes a little bit hard to really identify where the miss is. But if you looked at it, say, side by side, then it can be quite insightful as to like what you're missing. Also, if you're brand registered, I really like using search query performance reports to identify what the average conversion rate, like what is the average conversion rate in your market and how are you, like how far off are you? Although, again, I'm going to say it again, in beauty and supplements, some baby pet supplements are difficult. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones off the top of my head, but those ones specifically, reviews are huge. And so it's really difficult when you have little to no reviews. If you have no reviews in supplements, definitely I would say Vine program, absolutely. You want to work on that. If I negate a well-converting search term from a poorly performing keyword, and my sponsor runs video broad campaign would also block the well-performing one. No, it shouldn't. I'm assuming in this question when you're saying you're negating well-converting search term from a poorly performing keyword. No, it will only block. So if you're using exact match negative targeting, it only blocks the specific search term. So especially in like a broad match, like you were saying, the amount of searches that are being triggered through that, it's only going to get rid of the one that you blocked with a negative keyword. Now, the one exception to that rule is if it is a plural variation. Like, so let's say you saw the search term cup, non-plural, is converting really, really well, but cups, C-U-P-S with with an S on the end, plural version is really performing. Then if you add a negative exact of the non-plural version, it will block the plural version of that search term as well. So there is that nuance to it, like plurals and non-plural versions. So you do have to be a little bit careful there. And like, let's say this is something that happens. So actually we're pretty strict when we check for adding negatives on certain campaigns, because there is a possibility, like let's say you had 4 different broad match targets in a campaign and one of them is triggering the same search, but it's not performing in that one, but it's performing in the other broad match. Then in that case, if you add the negative, it blocks all of those times that search could appear for any of those targets that are contained within that ad group that you add the negative to. So in that case, it could block it. If it's performing through another keyword, then there is that possibility. So I would say there are those overlap potentials, but providing it's a completely different search term and it's not, again, performing when it's triggered through another keyword, you're totally fine for the most part. And I'm a huge fan of mainly using exact match negative targeting. There's very specific times where I'll Phrase match negative targeting can be helpful, but for the most part, I would say stick to exact match and you should be totally fine on that. But it's a good question. The other thing I would say, I just they just released a video I did with Mina Elias, and we were talking about negatives. For those of you listening, I don't recommend adding a negative into an existing campaign if you are just simply trying to launch that search term in another campaign. Meaning, if it's already performing, don't block it with a negative. That goes back to like, should you run search term isolation? I don't believe in search term isolation. I've actually seen it negatively impact accounts over time. It can work for a time, and then all of a sudden your cost per clicks go crazy. So I'm not a huge fan of that strategy. So I would say you definitely want to be strategic with what you're doing with negatives, but negatives can be very powerful. And I don't go so far as to like never add negatives to an account. There are some people who go that extreme. I think negatives can be very, very powerful when it comes to stopping underperforming clicks. But again, you want to be strategic with it. That's for sure. By the way, did anyone see the new charts inside of business reports? And for specific, I don't think I can. What if I can open an account up and see if I can blur something? That would be awesome. But there's some insanely awesome new charts that are available inside of sponsored brand ads. I swear, the accounts are like for Seller Central are getting like all the new toys these days. It's freaking fantastic. But if you go into business reports, specifically if you go into business reports in sales summary by child item, and you go there, and it's really interesting because in the child ASIN column, you'll just see it just says new on the header, and you're like, okay, what is that all about? But if you click on one of the child ASINs, it's actually going to pop open an account, like it will pop open a chart that will allow you to see the performance data over time for that specific child ASIN. It's pretty freaking amazing. And if you have not explored it yet, I definitely recommend you do that. So I'm going to see if I can pop open. Yeah, actually, I'm going to see if I can blur this, because if no one has explored this yet, this is honestly, in my personal opinion, I hate to use the word game changer, but I definitely think it is game changer. Let me hold on. Let me see if I can. Yeah, if you guys haven't explored this. Yeah, if you go in, I can't blur it enough, unfortunately. But if you go in there, you can also set up performance alerts. Like there's a lot of cool stuff happening in business reports. You can set up performance alerts for your data now, which is like insane. Again, all of this new stuff, you can set it up by the parent ASIN. You can set it up detailed page, sales and traffic by child item. Again, go click on one of your child ASINs, pop it open. I'm going to have to talk through it, but you actually get to see ordered product sales. And the other really amazing thing is you can this is the huge part, is you can compare your performance. So it says compare your product's performance against similar products based on catalog attributes and price points. So before, when we wanted to say like, hey, how is my product doing versus the market, we would go to search query performance, but there you're only seeing the search grid performance, and you're only seeing it on a very specific search term. We could look at brand metrics, but that was only at the entire brand level and for that subcategory, which again was better than what we had before, but wasn't as specific. And while you can know what, you can absolutely look at like what what everyone else is doing in terms of keyword ranking. You can look at their sales volume. You can look at a ton of different things, but you won't get like, hey, how am I doing specifically versus my competitors up until now? Like as of, I think I saw it like a week ago or so. So you can actually compare your performance versus the 20th percentile ASINs, the 50th percentile ASINs, or the top 10 ASINs, again, that are specific to your product. And then if you look at the metrics, it's like insane the amount of metrics, like any of the metrics that you want to look at. So you can look at page views. So wouldn't it be nice to know how your page views compare to the top 10 ASINs that are like your product? You can find that out now. If you wanted to look at your unit session percentage, again, how is my unit session percentage compared to the top 10 ASINs? You can 100% look at that now. So this is fantastic to know. So guys say, hey, look, they're getting more impressions than me, or they're getting more page views, or what is everyone's featured offer percentile? I mean, like, what's their buy box look like versus mine? Like, you can find all of that out. And then underneath it, it also will show you a button where you can click on like potential growth opportunities for the product. So insane stuff coming out. There's also a way where you can like start to build your own dashboards for yourself, which is like insane. We're really, really excited for how we're going to like start building out and customizing a lot of stuff. And then the good news is that this is all located in your account, totally free from Amazon. Asif saying, hey, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you as well. Yeah, so I'm excited. It's a great Thursday, which, by the way, if anyone has any Amazon advertising questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll pull them up and we will get those answered for you all. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep rambling on new updates. I'm actually going to have to look at, we have a whole team channel where we talk about like Amazon advertising updates and what we're seeing, what's coming out. I think the business report one was the most exciting recent one. Let's see. Other things that we've been seeing is we're looking at SQP data. We're getting that into our databases now. So really excited for that one. Yeah, I think our most recent updates were on custom analytics. So I think that's the one thing that Amazon had continued to release more of last year was a lot of like analytic insights. So things like search query performance came out. And other things like brand. Actually, if you haven't explored brand analytics and brand metrics recently, you should 100% do that. I've been talking with a lot of brands who are wanting to know like, hey, what's the repeat purchase aspects of my product? How is my product doing? You can actually look at customer journey analytics inside of brand analytics now, which will tell you like how your product is doing, what are your top ASINs, what are your top search queries, and will actually give you like how much, like you can see it on a line graph, like what is the category search, and then how much of that category search is going to my detail pages. So here's like, I'm looking at a brand right now within the last week. It's like, hey, we're converting most of the category searches into page views. And then we're looking at the detail page views and the drop off and who added to cart. Most of the drop off is coming when they're adding to the detail pages, which means that there's some conversion rate optimization to be done versus say like other brands where, hey, most of our category searches are not converting into detail page views. So there we probably need to do some offer optimizations, some image optimizations. Again, so much data and information coming out from Amazon onto like how to improve, how to sell better, and how to just make the most of your time on Amazon. So if you don't have time allocated to explore, or you don't have an agency that shares the insights with you, because we update our clients like every single month on all of the new things that are coming out, I would definitely say spend a couple hours to go through it and yeah, spend a couple hours to go through it And it looks like we're a little bit thin on questions today. I know we have a lot of people viewing in, so you guys are just listening to me talking, which sorry. Okay, cool. Question on search query performance reports. Yeah, so if anyone has a question, feel free to drop it into the chat. I'll pull it up and answer. While selecting keywords, also once you identify strong keywords from that data, first part of the question is, I have a question regarding search query performance. When you're analyzing the report, what key metrics do you focus on? And then while selecting keywords, once you identify strong keywords from that data, where do you recommend placing them? That is a good question. So the first thing that I would recommend doing is I like looking at the data relative to itself. Because the one thing to understand about the data that is in search query performance report, one, it's insane. It's amazing. Love it. But it only contains the data from the search grid. So it's not going to include data from sponsored brand ads. If there's a carousel, which those are sponsored product ads, it doesn't include that. It doesn't include any data from like product pages or like there's more clicks and things that happen outside of the search grid than you think. So if you're comparing it to say like your advertising data, like, wait, I'm only getting this many clicks here in search query performance and my advertising is telling me that there's a lot more. It's difficult to like combine data sets with search query performance reports. So when I have a data set that is not as easy to combine, I like to compare the data set to itself. If that makes sense. The other thing to keep in mind is that which search query performance report, it only includes purchases that happened within that 24-hour period, and it's not back updated, which means in sponsored product ads, you will have sales attributed that happen within at least a 7-day window. And for sponsored brands and display, it's about a 14-day window. And so in that case, again, it's going to look really thin on the conversions and the orders. So I like to compare it to itself. So what do I compare it to itself? What I compare is how my conversion rate is doing versus the averages on that specific search. So I look at conversion rates and I look at click-through rates. And I say, where do I have strong conversion rates and strong click-through rates? And then also the other thing to keep in mind is how many potential searches are happening. So very similar, like if you did research in say like helium-10 and then you only saw that it had like 50 searches a month on average. I mean, again, according to helium-10, which is all relative. And then you like put that into your, you put it into your advertising. Most likely you probably aren't going to get very many impressions on that. And that's fine. That's because there's not a lot of search. There's not a lot of volume to be had. So just also keep that in mind in terms of the volume potential. So I like to sort it by where am I winning, or at least on par with averages on click-through rate, mostly conversion rate, but I also like to look at click-through rate as well. And then where do I feel like there's enough volume for me to be able to go after? So that's my hit list. That's how I select my keywords. Now, when I go into my advertising to figure out like, what do I do with this keyword? I first off want to know, am I already advertising on this keyword? Because in a world of like, the easiest lever is to look at search query performance report, identify that, go into your ad console, find where you're advertising that product on that keyword, and then you just dial up the bids or you get more aggressive with it. Like that's the quickest to getting up and running. So that's typically our process, is look at where we're already currently advertising it. Is it in a structure where I can be more specific, meaning like, do I have a whole bunch of products in this campaign? Okay, then maybe I don't want to dial that one up because it could be advertising different products. Is it a match type that I want to get more aggressive on? So like, is it an exact match or phrase match? Which again, there's nothing wrong with broad match, by the way. Like you can still rank using broad match. It's just if you dial up the bids, then like you are not only putting that additional ad budget to like that one specific place, right? And in that case, I would want to go, sorry, lost train of thought. So I would want to say, like, is it in a structure where I can get more aggressive with it? If it is, then what I'm going to do is just get more aggressive in that current structure, maybe rename it, maybe do some cleanup. But if it's not in a current structure, then that's where I would want to launch it. And typically, if we're going after it for ranking purposes, then I'm going to launch it most likely in a exact match keyword. If I want to go a little bit more broader, long tail, I might launch it in a phrase match, would be how we would approach it. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any other follow-up questions, let me know. Hi, PPC bulk files are great, but sometimes it's convenient to look in the ad call itself. Can't seem to sort the Amazon ad console columns headers anymore. Not sure how long. Oh, interesting. You can't sort headers anymore? Are you kidding me? I swear we were able to do that. Yeah, to be honest, they sometimes Amazon makes updates and then is not all that great. Unfortunately. Can we not sort? Oh, dang it. You are correct. Are you correct? Oh, no, you can sort headers. You can sort headers. It's just another different button. It's a different button. Let me see if I can show you real quick. Hold on. Yeah, you can totally sort headers. It's just you need a different. It is look weird, right? So when you hover over this, it looks like you can't. But when I hover over this, wait, can you see that? Can you see that at all? I think you can. There's like a little up and down click option. So if I click on that, then it works. So that should, hopefully that is what you were talking about, unless you're talking about like another thing that I'm not aware. Can you? Oh, well, now you made me find something else interesting. Have you guys seen this? I'm actually going to create a loom directly after this, and I'm going to share it with my team because this is freaking fantastic. Did you know that you can move header columns? Hold on. Look, you can grab these now, and you can move them around. That's okay. I would consider that an upgrade. Actually, I would consider that an upgrade. You can move them around and you can sort them, but it looks like where you sort them is a little bit different in that case. All right, next question. On my last launch, I sold 500 units in 2.5 weeks. 80% of them came from sponsor brands video. I know sponsored products is the main driver of ranking, however, jumped to the top position without pushing sponsored products a lot. So from now on, I'm focused more on, ooh, okay, that is interesting. That is interesting. I'm going to have to go back to the team with that one and test, which is honestly, I love when I get feedback on things that are working that were different to what I had seen before. So the reason why I typically talk about sponsored brands video not being as impactful for ranking is because that had been my observed behavior before, and I had audited a ton of brands where they were struggling to get results in sponsored. I would want to actually. I do have a follow-up question for you. I don't know if you can answer it. Did you focus on sponsor brands video because it was working well, and did you struggle to get results in sponsored product ads? Like it didn't convert at all in sponsored product ads and only converted in sponsor brands video? Or did it just like naturally sponsor brands video did a lot of volume? I would be curious to know that, because the brands that I had observed, the reason why they focused on sponsor brands video is because they couldn't convert in sponsored product ads, which leads me to believe maybe it was more of a conversion issue, because sponsored product ads more likely mirrors organic search than like sponsor brands video, you know? This is me thinking out loud. This is my logic tree. It's like, okay, I know this, I've observed this, I'm curious about this. So I would actually be interested to know if you have any feedback on that. If you were getting results at all in sponsored product ads or not. Oh, you're saying yes, you can move header columns. It's good, but the sort up and down arrows are not in all accounts. Yeah, if you're in the UK, in some cases, I have noticed that in different marketplaces, it may be different. So hopefully, I guess you might not have access to multiple UK markets. We technically do. That might be something that I'd have to log into other accounts and test it. But I'm not sure if it's all UK accounts. Sometimes when there's updates, hopefully it gets fixed. I can understand how that would be an absolute pain in the butt. It would be an absolute pain in the butt. Well, awesome. No, I appreciate it. This has been fantastic. We still have a couple minutes left, although if there's no more Amazon ad questions, I may hop a little bit early to prep for another call. But in that case, I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate me being able to learn from you all. So Gregor, I might reach out to you on LinkedIn and ask a follow-up about that, because I think that is really interesting. And I think Sponsor Brands video has the potential to drive more conversions. So if that is the case, maybe it becomes more important to make Sponsor Brands video part of a launch strategy. We may have to redo our launch strategy deck. I'm not really sure. That's definitely, I mean, we'll want to test it, but so here's some good feedback. The product I launched was a variation of an old product. From the past experience with the old product, struggled to convert on sponsored products and found that Sponsor Brands video is working well. So for the new ones, I bet 80% on Sponsor Brands video. I like it. Maybe another follow-up question. If you have it, I'd be curious to know. So when you say a variation of an old product, I don't know if it was on the listing, like was it a variation or did you launch it standard? Like I have all the questions for you. I probably should just reach out. I'll give you a free coaching call if you let me ask you more questions about your observations on this. Cool. No, that's really cool. I appreciate it. The algorithm is constantly changing. So I think the more that we learn and share with each other, the more that we can all just grow and take advantage of like the changes, because there's so many things happening rapidly, and like we have access to quite a lot of brands. So a lot of times we like, again, our team is constantly testing things, and then we're observing those tests across all of our brands and then bringing whatever tests we have to new brands. And that's how we develop our strategy, which is fantastic. But there's always some other outlier cases or some things to be tested. So an example is I was like not a huge fan at all of dynamic up and down bidding, but like we've actually seen that dynamic up and down bidding, surprisingly enough, in like a lot of competitive categories, like does really well, which has been interesting. And again, I kind of had to eat my words on like never run up and down bidding. You know, it has a time and a place. Do you need to be careful of it? Have I seen it burn accounts and like drive up costs per clicks and like absolutely destroy things? Yes. But can it actually be helpful in certain scenarios and give you an advantage? Like, yeah, actually it can. So in that case, again, lots of interesting things. This will be something I'm definitely going to have to give to the team and see. So yeah, I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn. That sounds awesome. I'd love to connect. Cool. And in that case, let's see if we have any more if anyone has another Amazon ad question or another follow-up on your observations on Sponsor Brands video, let me know. All right. Should we adjust ROAS and PP product page, top of search, rest of search and product pages for product targeting campaigns? Does it make any difference? Good question. I would say yes, it does make a difference. How I would approach that is, what is the performance of those placement settings for that individual campaign? Like an example would be, is top of search crushing it on your product targeting campaigns? Well, then it makes sense for me to add a placement percentage to that. So I would treat optimizations of placement percentages on these campaigns just as I would do any other campaign, which is, what is the performance of that placement? Does it make sense for me to test a small increase on a placement percentage? And then obviously continuously evaluating placement percentages, because sometimes things work really well and then they stop working. So you definitely want to have optimization cadence where you're like, hey, we check placements, you know, every so often. Every so often be, I would say, minimum monthly, probably weekly to every other week, depending on how much ad spend you have. Which approach is better for lowering a cost? Getting conversions through auto campaigns with dynamic bidding, or focusing only on manual campaigns with highly relevant keywords? I would do both. I would do both. I wouldn't treat it as either or. Now, I would have auto campaigns, and I would use a low bid on auto campaigns. I would start. I am a huge fan of running auto campaigns, broad match campaigns, any broader targeting, but I am a huge fan of running those at low bids, just so you can make sure that you're. I don't like overspending on these. I like keeping those for low cost per clicks, profitable traffic. And then in that case, I do like focusing on highly relevant keywords through manual campaigns. I would do both. Which bid is better? That's a good question, but I'm not really sure what you mean by bid. The best bid is going to be the one that allows you to achieve your goals within whatever profitability targets you have set for that one specific campaign. It depends on the strategy. So an example is, I was talking about auto campaigns and things. I'm like, hey, run autos. Oh, run them at low bids because my goal is low cost profitable traffic. So there, the best bid in that scenario is going to be a lower bid. And again, I've said it in the beginning of this broadcast, but I'll say it now. Low bids are always relative to the average cost per click in your account. So a low bid in, say, supplement accounts could be $1 sometimes, because the average cost per click is like $5. So $1 is relatively low versus like if you have one where the average cost per click is like 50 cents, well, then low is probably 15 to 20 cents, right? So it's relative. And then in a, say, ranking campaign, my goal is to drive a large amount of conversions and a large amount of sales velocity on that one specific search. So in that case, best bid is going to be the one that allows me to achieve that goal, which is probably going to be on the higher end. So if we're strictly talking ACoS, then the best bid is the lowest one you can get away with. But if we're talking about other goals, which you should be, because ranking is really what drives long-term success on Amazon. So you want to have that at least part of your strategy. And so in that case, I would say it depends on the campaign. Please, fixed bids is better or down only because fixed bids are getting more control impressions but less sales. Yeah, so I would say I like dynamic bids down only. Fixed bids can be helpful, especially in a ranking strategy because the goal there is impressions. So what we have found is that fixed bids typically gets you more impressions, and that's kind of the goal in the beginning. I'm like, hey, I just want to get as many eyeballs on this ad as I possibly can. So there I would use it. But if you use only down only in your account, I think you would be fine. And a lot of times what we'll do is like, you can start with down only. So it's like, I'm going to start with down only. And then if I keep increasing bids, if I'm struggling to get impressions, if I like can't get the algorithm to serve me impressions, then it's like, okay, then test fixed bidding, because I know that could be helpful with impressions. So if you needed like one default, I would say use down only and then convert to testing fixed bids if you need to drive impressions and you're struggling to do that. Although I will say, if you're struggling to drive impressions, I would test increasing bids first. And then if that still doesn't work, then you can test the fixed bids. But you need a pretty hefty bid in the beginning to drive those impressions. And that's actually part of our launch strategy, going after like just getting a little bit more aggressive with the bids in the beginning. Please share the best strategy for gift keywords. Yes. So the gift keywords, in our experience, you want to be specific to the product is the best strategy. So an example would be, okay, let's say it's which honestly mugs are insanely competitive, but like, let's say it's a mug. Okay. I wouldn't want to do like gift for her, gift for mom. I would say like, gift for mom. And again, I would be doing keyword research. So then, I don't know what the search volume on this is. I don't know what the market is like on this, but I would want to do like gift for mom mug, right? So if I do gift for mom mug, then that's more specific. But let's say it's a flower mug, okay? Gift for, flower mug gift for mom, right? Specific to the product. What we find is that if you do like gift for her, mom gift, like all those like really high volume ones, your conversion rate tends to be just so low and they're very competitive. So the cost per clicks are really high. So your performance on those keywords is just, to be honest, most of the times is horrible. And so in those cases, I'm more a fan of going like super specific on what I'm like how relevant can I get to the product and still have gift. And then once I have momentum there, then if I have the conversion rates and, the review ratings and all of that to go after the other keywords, then I will, if I can convert on gift for mom, fantastic. I'm going to rank the heck out of that one. But in my experience, most of the time, it's difficult to do that, notoriously difficult to do that. So I don't really like that one. Although what I will say is if you really want to go after something like it's a gift for mom, I've tested with mixed success. So sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. It is highly dependent on the product, but you can also target the ASINs that are ranked high on gift for mom, and just see if you can get some like residual traffic through that. Can be kind of helpful. Thanks. My sales are inconsistent. I'm getting conversion rates on main keywords via auto campaigns, but ranking is low. Should I move these terms to manual? They often don't perform well when tested and usually disturb the auto performance. Yeah, so I would test them in manual campaigns. Know that the ACoS is probably going to be high. And then also, I would not negate it in the auto. I would leave it active in the auto, and then just launch it in a manual campaign is how I would do that. And just for whatever reason, a lot of times when it's performing really well in auto, sometimes when you move it to manuals, my question is, what does not performing mean? If not performing means I'm not getting any orders, that's one thing. But if not performing means the ACoS is just higher, then like it is technically getting sales. It's just a matter of getting enough momentum and then eventually starting to optimize so you can bring down the cost per click. But it's very common for you to see something that's like, oh my gosh, this is getting like a 20% ACoS in the auto. And then you launch it in a manual exact match and it's like, oh crap, why is this getting like 50% ACoS? It's really high. It makes no sense. One, that's normal, and I wouldn't expect it to perform the best that it ever can right off the bat. Now, if you're getting a ton of clicks and no orders on it, there is that. So then there I would check like placement percentage, like where am I showing up? Am I showing up high enough? Do I need to have a little bit, like, is there some other way that I can test this? But if it is generating orders and it is technically working, it's just you're not getting it at as low of a cost per click as you were in the original campaign is typically what the reason is. And with that, I really appreciate it. It looks like we are at the top of the hour. Excuse me. And I do have, last question. And this is a fantastic question. So I am going to take this one, even though it's going to put me over time. The question is, what helped you 10x your PPC skills? So 2 skills I recommend any ad manager work on. And one of them is going to seem counterintuitive. The first one is going to be data analytics. Understand, not necessarily like data analytics, but more like, what do these numbers mean? What do these numbers tell me? So example is, click-through rate went up or down. Okay, great. What are the things that impact click-through rate? Okay, main image, like I can talk through all these. Okay, check this, check that, check this, because I understand the data analytics. And again, the data as in what are the things that impact this. So it's almost like the, you can see the matrix, if that makes sense. You can see all the numbers and the impacts and the relationship. You can see the relationships. That's probably a better way to put it. Data analytics through the lens of relationship between things that impact each other. And just get curious. Get very, very curious. Test a whole bunch of stuff, right? Observe things, tweak things, test things, and then try and understand it through the lens of relationships. And then the second thing which will make you a valuable worker, person, anything, is getting good at communication is huge. Now, I speak of it from an agency perspective. Communication is like the most important skill to have in the agency world. If you are a brand owner, then maybe it's a little bit less so, but eventually if you grow your products in your account, like you're going to need to have VAs, and then you might get brand managers, or you might be working with an agency, or you might hire, like, nobody goes at this alone. And so the better you get at communication, the better, which good communication is simply being able to relay your ideas through spoken and written word and have them understood by somebody else. And I would say the biggest thing to understand in communication is clarity. How do I make sure that the words that I say, how I say them, are understood clearly by the other party? And if you get really good at that, you will go you'll go far in most industries, but you will go very far in the Amazon PPC realm. So hopefully that was helpful, but that was the last fantastic question. I really appreciate it. So I am looking forward to it. I will see you guys all same time, same place next week. And with that, I look forward to it and hope you all crush it in your Amazon. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.